Mr. Mandela. He said these words when he stood in the courtroom. And I'm going to read Abraham Lincoln's first because I want you to see these two men, why they were both leaders, distinguished. Abraham Lincoln says when he wanted to set the slaves free in America, his own party fought against him. Abraham Lincoln was actually attacked in the Congress by his own party when he said, let the black people go free. He went against his own party. Let me say this again to the Bahamians. Listen, Abraham Lincoln can never be forgotten because he went against his own party's position. This is very serious for the Caribbean because we love to toe the party line. You toe the line, we ain't gonna never forget you was here. We won't remember you, rather. Abraham Lincoln went against his own party. Why? Because most of his party members owned slaves. And here's what he said, I quote, he said, I have said nothing but what I am willing to live by, and if it be the pleasure of the Almighty God, to die by. He found something to die for. That's why he will live forever. I say to every so-called politician, what are you willing to die for? Have you found it? Nelson Mandela, here's a picture of Nelson Mandela. This is his prison number, 4664. Let me quote what he said, standing in front of the apartheid courtroom with over 300,000 people outside listening and waiting. He said these words before the white government of South Africa. He says, it is an ideal for which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. Sounds as if he and Abraham read the same script. What are you willing to be criticized for? Some people say, well, you know, I don't want to confront no one because I don't want no one to criticize me. You are useless on earth. If you are against homosexual marriages, say so. Yes, write me, say so. Listen, you can't stop me from having my own convictions. But we want to be liked by everybody. Let me tell you something. Whoever approval you want will disrespect you. If you give in to the current of the times itself will disrespect you. Have you ever heard this? I don't like him, but I respect him. That's what you want. I can't stand him, but I respect his position. That's what you want. That's leadership. Leaders don't look for love. They demand respect because of their convictions. Give yourself a hand. Here's the verse I think is related to leadership that Jesus talked about. Matthew chapter 5 verse 10. He said, blessed are those who are what? Persecuted because of righteousness. Righteousness means standing for what is right in accordance to the laws of God. Notice he says, when you do that, you will be persecuted. You're not persecuted because of your attitude or your personality. It should be because of a conviction. Blessed are those who are what? Persecuted for righteousness' sake. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Can I ask you, do you think that Nelson Mandela embraced the kingdom with this verse? Yes, he was persecuted for righteousness' sake. Amen. People question his faith. They question his convictions spiritually. But let me tell you something. This man was more holier than most pastors and bishops. Why? He went to jail for 27 years because of a conviction for human value. This is real leadership. And Jesus said that man is blessed. And the kingdom of God honors that man. The next verse says, blessed are you when men shall what? Insult you. They beat him. They put him in jail. They put dogs on their people. In other words, when you stand up for what is right, get ready for insult. By the way, that's a promise. The Lord promised me I'm blessed. The Lord promised me I'll prosper. Yeah, how about getting insulted? How about getting persecuted too? Come on, embrace that. Clap, I dare you. He promised when you stand for righteousness, you will be insulted. You will be persecuted. Look at this. And all kinds of evil will come against you because of me, he says. Stop looking for people to like you when you are standing for righteousness. Mr. Mandela understood that prison is the price for principles. He understood that being robbed of his life was the only way to set people free. They attacked him. The evil machine was against him. But the Bible says, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, because great is your reward in heaven. I have a suspicion that Mr. Mandela was welcomed into heaven by the Lord. I have no question that in my own mind. Why? This man did exactly what Jesus said here. He stood for what was right, was persecuted for it, insulted for it, and Jesus said, I promise you, that man shall be great in reward in the kingdom of heaven. Sometimes we think that praying and fasting gets you into the kingdom of heaven as a reward. No, it's standing for what is right. Being insulted and persecuted for what is right. You go to work and they tell you, who do you think you are? You're so close-minded. You're also narrow-minded. You got phobia. Hey, I don't care. I believe what I believe. It's my conviction. Insult me. Give God a hand. Come on, somebody. You must stand for right, but it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you. He said, but don't be surprised, because you ain't the only one to be persecuted. Look at the last statement. He says, so persecuted they, the prophets. Hey, you ain't getting no special treatment. They shot Abraham Lincoln in the head. They killed JFK because he went to the South to set and give courage to the liberation of black people. They put Mr. Mahatma Gandhi in jail and wanted to starve him to death. They robbed Mr. Mandela of 27 years of his life. What price are you going to pay for what is right? Or do you just want to watch TV? Your flat screen is your joy, and your nice car is your wonder, and all those nice chicken and food stuff you eat? Or is it for the sake of other people you're willing to sacrifice? I'm not afraid to die. I believe what I'm saying and doing so much that I'm willing to speak to anyone face to face. I will never respect someone at the point where they cause me to sacrifice my convictions. You ain't worth that kind of respect. I will honor you until you violate my convictions. Martin Luther King Jr. made a statement. I wrote it down in my notes some years ago. He said, there comes a time to disobey unrighteous law. Not because something is a law doesn't mean it's worthy of your obedience. It was a law in South Africa that you couldn't marry outside your race. It was a law. You'd go to jail. They'd kill you. The law was wrong. It was a law that you had to have a passport within your own country to move from place to place. It was a law. Nelson Mandela took the passport publicly, and he had a little can, and he put fire in it. And in the front of all the cameras, he took his passport and burned it in the front of the whole government. What are you willing to do? What law are you willing to break people free from oppression? When he burned it, they arrested him and locked him up. There are some things in the Bahamas that we may not want to accept. We got to study every law they're creating to make sure it doesn't violate the conscience of God. That's within us. And be willing to pay a price to stand up against it. Ladies and gentlemen, I put it to you that character prevents leaders from hurting those around them. Mr. Mandela understood that he could change the mindset of the people, that he could change the qualities of the people's thinking. His leadership quality brought morality and conscience to the followers. They began to stand up and fight themselves. Matter of fact, they had a trial. Over 275 of them were tried at the same time. He was in the group. They arrested all of them and put them on trial. The trial lasted for years. Ladies and gentlemen, are you willing to go to jail as a group? Next year, there's going to be some referendums. The Lord's speaking to me about some things. Don't be surprised when I make some announcements. You and I must not watch things happen anymore. Now stop thinking I can be prime minister. Even though that crossed my mind. Look at this photograph. When Mr. Mandela demanded freedom for his people, Great Britain was on the side of the government of South Africa. Now look at her. Like everything okay now. She never spoke out against apartheid. The Queen never said she was against the oppression of black people. Her government supported apartheid. And now all of them want to sit next to him. Want them ride in their carriage. Want to take a photograph with him. Tell your neighbor, when you do right, your enemies want to ride with you. Clap right there. That's right. When you do right, they want to ride with you. Let me just say this too. We got to choose to change we desire. Nelson Mandela decided that fools multiply when wise men are silent. He decided, I will not be silent. He also understood that evil men succeed when righteous men do nothing. He also understood that darkness rules when light is absent. He got involved. He was in the middle of the crowd. He was in the middle of the courtrooms day after day telling them, you are wrong. What you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. You must be in their face. I say to you, he understood that problems will reign when solutions are ignored. He also understood that if you're going to change the world, you have to confront that world. I want you to say out loud these statements with me, please. Number one, go. You cannot stop or avoid change. Number two, you have two options. You can become a victim of change or an agent of change. Number three, an agent of change initiates the change they desire. Number four, if we don't be proactive, we'll be reactive. And listen, the next one, please. You will be either agents of change or victims of change. In other words, vision without values demand that your destiny is canceled. We cannot just sit by and watch things change. I want to show you a photograph of this man. I love this photograph. Dr. Nelson Mandela. What a face of determination. He understood some things. First of all, character is the most powerful force a leader can possess. And therefore, he understood it protects his life, his leadership, and his legacy. Mr. Mandela understood that character is manifested when you stand up for a conviction. Without character, he also knew that every other act of leadership is a risk. Without character, there's no longevity. Mr. Mandela will live forever because his character is bigger than his death. I wonder why you need a tombstone. Could it be because you have been so lacking in character that we got to mark the spot we placed you to remind us that you used to be here? I decided I want to live in such a way that I don't need a tombstone anymore. That I want to make such an impact in my generation. I am willing to die and perish for the sake of the conviction God put in my heart. You got to find that same passion. You know, Bahamas Faith Ministries is known all over the world now. And people, you hear the man spoke about it on the telephone a moment ago from South Africa, how people respect this ministry. But the price you pay for that, can't imagine it. I haven't slept in my own bed for more than a month this year, it seems. The price of going from suitcase to suitcase and hotel to hotel room and going from an airplane, 18 hours, walking straight to the stage and speaking to 5,000 people, and then they feed you and keep you up all night talking to you, and they think that you got energy. The price. Don't get jealous of me on TV, honey. Half of the time, you don't know what that is talking to you. That's just fumes talking. I'm running on fumes. The price. You can't change the world and go to bed 8 o'clock in the night. When I lie on that cold floor of Mr. Nelson Mandela's prison cell, I wept. My wife and I went there together. I lay on that floor and I cried. Because I was sleeping on the same concrete that he slept on for 27 years. How can a man live in this little hole? The price. Everybody want to take a picture with him now. Look at the prince. Prince Philip and Prince Charles didn't say a word to support him when he was agitating for freedom. Now Prince Charles won't smile with him. It's amazing how people are. I pray that they all learn a lesson. Don't be on the wrong side of history. And finally, Nelson Mandela reminds of Martin Luther King Jr. All the leaders that changed the world had a different attitude. Roosevelt said, character in the long run is the decisive factor in the life of an individual and of nations alike. In other words, he was saying, look, if your leader have character, your nation will be respected. Why do we honor South Africa today? We don't honor South Africans. But the leader's character was so strong that everybody's honoring the country. Are you ashamed of your leader? Don't answer that question. In other words, Roosevelt understood that the leader of a country can define the respect people have for the people of that nation. Look at this next quote. This is Myles Munroe. A leader's gift is only as safe as the character that contains it. We need leaders whose character is so loud that they don't need to say words. When I met Mr. Mandela the second time, he walked into the room, and the whole room went quiet. And he never said a word. His presence was so heavy. His physical presence was louder than his words. What leader in your country can walk into a room and stop the room? Because his character is so awesome. You don't need to talk plenty. Don't answer that question. Your character is more important than your conversation. Your character gives weight to your words. A woman of character and a man of character don't have to speak much, because your life becomes your words. It's called character. In other words, a leader's values are personal, but they are never private. If you love your wife and don't keep sweetheart, you could tell the young people don't have sex. Let me say it slow. Y'all missed that. If you love your wife and don't have sweethearts all over the place, you can stand up in parliament and tell the young people stop having unlawful sex. In other words, your life determines the weight of your words. One time I was sitting in a church right here in the Bahamas, I won't call no name, and I was there to speak at a seminar. And the guy who was in charge of the church got up to speak, and he started talking about marriage. And the lady next to me leaned over and says, "That's his sweetheart right over there in the choir." This is a true story. She said, "I know what he's talking about, because he got treated me here." I'm sitting there going, this woman is showing us that your character cancels your words. Your values are personal, but they're never private. I put it to you, friends. This is the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Look at him smiling again. Great Britain was against Mandela. They refused to vote for sanctions against apartheid. And now they're taking pictures. See that shirt he got on? I got it on too, see? That's his shirt. See, I want you to see the shirt. That's why I put the shirt. It's the Mandela shirt. You see, it's amazing. Here's what you learn. The lesson you learn is this. No matter who's against you, your character will eventually defeat them. Your convictions will always outlive your enemies. And that's what leadership is about. Don't worry about those who are against you now. I love this photograph of Mr. Mandela. He went to visit the prison that he was in. And this time, he's smiling. Right next to him is a candle. It only takes one light to light the world. You can do something. Look at this man. This is leadership. You don't get your rewards in the beginning. This is leadership. I want to be like him. I want to be willing to say, I'll go to prison for my people.